Welcome back to CBS Sports HQ, presented by Geico. Ryan Wilson's latest mock draft post-Super Bowl, and some interesting moves in this one, including Jayden Daniels jumping Drake May as QB2 there. And something interesting also happens at number 13, having to do with another quarterback. I don't think we've seen this high before. Let's welcome back Brady Quinn, Rick Spielman, and let's bring on the guy behind the mock draft himself, Ryan Wilson. Brady, let me start with this. Jayden Daniels jumping Drake May, going to the Commanders at number 2 overall. Ryan, and you can see the full mock draft on CBSSports.com, said he wouldn't be surprised if perhaps in a couple years we're saying that Jayden Daniels is the best player out of this draft. Yeah,
I mean, look, I think when you look at his final season at LSU, he wins the Heisman. He continued to prove from his time at Arizona State and going to LSU, he got better and better and better. And I think the one thing that stands out to me is how dynamic he is running the football. I mean, he's a legit threat to hurt you with his legs, but it's also an improvement playing from the pocket. So if he continues this path and continues this growth moving forward, I think he could be a special player down the road. Now, he needs to put on a few extra LBs. I mean, he's going to play more games, take more hits up to the NFL level, but when you compare him to a guy like Joe Burrow in their final season, you realize then just how special this season was for Jayden Daniels. And I think a reason why, Amanda, you might see some teams that say, hey, maybe we like him better than what we saw from Drake May this past year, which wasn't even on par with what Jayden Daniels did. Now, I'm still a big Drake May fan. I think him and Caleb Williams have showcased the ability to separate themselves from the rest of this group. But I think Jayden Daniels is right there behind those two. And there could be some teams that have differing opinions from mine.
No, that's right, Brady. And I think teams, for the most part, like Dre as QB2, and there may be even some conversation about him as QB1 because Caleb's off-field dad issues, things that we'll get into in the next few weeks, I'm sure. But in terms of on the field, you hit on it. Jayden Daniels' track record over the last 12 months is as close to impeccable as you're going to get in terms of the way he played productivity-wise. And sometimes when we look at these other quarterbacks in the class, you have to squint to see the good plays because there's a lot of bad plays around them. There are reasons for that. Drake May's offensive line wasn't great. Didn't have the playmakers that he had a few years ago when Josh Downs was there. Tez Walker came and the offense got a little better. But I just think sometimes we fall in love with guys and we have on these blinders and are not willing to look at other players. And if Jayden Daniels does, in fact, his comp right now for me is Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, a little thicker build. You talk about he needs to gain some weight. But if Jayden Daniels is a Lamar Jackson type, Lamar Jackson's the MVP. Maybe it makes sense to think about him as something better than the 32nd pick, which is where Lamar went a few years ago, and perhaps something higher, a top 10, maybe even a top 5 player.
Ryan, when we take a look at your latest mock draft, it is very heavy when it comes to the offensive side of the ball, especially in the top 10. Only one defensive player being Dallas Turner. But at number 11, and Rick, I want to toss this to you, we get Quinn Mitchell to the Vikings at 11. Ryan saying that he has the ability to be in that CB1 conversation. What would you think about this pick?
I didn't like the pick, but I don't like much that Ryan does on our podcast.
He's feeling sick. You got to be nice to him at some point, Rick.
I did, but now it's 100 days before the draft. I'm allowed to unleash on him. Very good football player, showed up down at the Senior Bowl. I think he is vying for the #1 corner coming out of this draft with the kid from Alabama, so Terrion Arnold. But I think the Minnesota Vikings here have to look at the pass rush. And you got Jared Verse sitting there. You know you got DJ Wanham up. You got Danielle Hunter up. You got Marcus Davenport up. If you can't rush the passer, then you're not going to help the secondary. And they do need help at the corner position. But Jared Verse, in my opinion, is too good of a player, too good of a pass rusher to pass up, especially with all the needs they're going to have at the defensive end position.
Brady, Amanda, you know how I know that Rick loves me? Because he says mean things and tries to hurt my feelings. And I say that because at the Senior Bowl a few weeks ago, we were watching my favorite player, Spencer Rattler. End of the week, guess what Rick said to me? You know what? Spencer might not be that bad. So he's going to come around on Quinn Mitchell. He came around. He doesn't like me telling the truth on him here. He's going to come around on Spencer Rattler. I get the part about the edge rush need for Minnesota. They also have needs in the secondary, but to Rick's point, maybe you value edge rusher more than the secondary class. The secondary class is probably a little deeper as we sit here right now. And Jared Verse is a special player, had 2 great seasons at Florida State after transferring from Albany. And if that's the direction you want to go, I wouldn't push back too hard on that either.
Rick will come around. We'll get him there, Ryan. Okay, so the biggest splash, I think, in this latest mock draft, the one that one of our producers, Noah, had standing up saying, did you see what Ryan did with J.J. McCarthy? Coming in 13th overall to the Raiders. Raiders. We're hearing that the Raiders are going to be very aggressive and looking for a new quarterback. Ryan, you plainly said in your article he is not my QB4, but you put him in this position. Brady, I'm going to give you first say on this.
I mean, I could see it. I mean, look, he was uber successful during his time at Michigan. Well, he lost one game the entire time, finished on a high note, winning a national championship. He's accurate. He's athletic. He's super smart. He's tough. And he's a great leader. I mean, you ask anyone in that locker room, he's a selfless player, and it was okay to saying, hey, whatever we need to do to get a win, whether it's handing the football off or taking it myself. So, you know, when it all comes down to it, I think a lot of teams are going to like what they see in J.J. McCarthy. The only question is going to be, you know, how much higher is his ceiling, only because we didn't get to see a whole lot of that within that Jim Harbaugh Sharon Moore offense there at Michigan. But every single time they asked him to make a throw or do something to go win a game, he did it for Michigan. So I'm extremely high on J.J. McCarthy. I think if he was in next year's draft, he'd probably be looking to be the top overall quarterback. But because he's in this year's draft and it's loaded with talent, you might see him somewhere where he's the 4th, 5th, or 6th quarterback taken in this year's class. But clearly, the Las Vegas Raiders, they need a quarterback, and I could see them potentially making this move with a guy like J.J. McCarthy.
Yeah, Brady, selfishly, I wanted him to come back, too, just to see more of him. And it's not his fault that he ran the offense he was asked to run and did it at a high level. And many of the things you point out are the exact same things that Rick points out when he talks about why he's high on J.J. McCarthy. But I just don't know what I don't know. And by that, I mean I haven't seen him do it consistently. We know what Caleb can do. We know what Drake and Jayden Daniels can do. Even Michael Penix, who's played a ton of football as well, and Bo Nix. But J.J. is still young. He's still running the offense as a game manager. I mean in the best possible sense. But as Rick points out, and you noted, strong arm. He's a great athlete. I just wonder if he's going to get, I don't want to call it overdrafted, but let's say he's a top 15 pick and he's forced into action too early. What does that look like? You don't want it to be a situation where he's forced onto the field because of his draft status. You want him to go to the right fit, be in a great situation, and have a Brock Purdy type experience with his first 2 years in the league and get the most out of that player. That's my only concern, just because I haven't seen enough of JJ to know exactly who he's going to be at the next level.
Gents, we have watched, gents is what I was trying to say, Jason Kelsey celebrate vicariously, I think, through his brother. Who knows if they're going to allow him at the parade tomorrow. We don't know if he's going to end up playing next season, but we do know that the Eagles are desperate for some help, losing 6 of their last 7 when you include the postseason there. Ryan has them taking a wide receiver, though. You already got guys like A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith here, Keon Coleman. Rick, what do you think about this?
Man, it's just another head scratcher for me, to be honest with you. So he's not even in my. I have a couple receivers ahead of him in this latest mock draft, and I don't even want to get on a J.J. McCarthy thing because I do love J.J. McCarthy, and Ryan is just doing it to create traffic on the website. But let's get back to the task at hand. I don't see the Philadelphia Eagles going receiver here. They have Slay, who did not play very well in the secondary last year. Getting older, Bradbury, who had a horrible year last year. You have an opportunity to help your secondary, help your defense, and I would have gone with a Cooper DeJean from Iowa because he can play slot, he can play outside, he can potentially play safety, he gives you a punt returner as well. So I don't know how you can pass up defense the way the Philadelphia Eagles played, and you could always swing back around to get another receiver because there are going to be some very good receivers on Friday. But to say you go receiver here, especially Keon Coleman, who I'm not a huge fan of, I would have went with a DB here, and I would have went with Cooper DeJean.
Amanda Brady, Rick's much higher on Brian Thomas Jr. I get that at LSU. I don't hate that necessarily. And by the way, if Rick just did a mock draft, he wouldn't be able to yell at me about my mock draft. That's part of the issue of him not doing one. So our producer on the with the first pick, Eric DeVerdinis, is an Eagles fan. And he also would like defensive back help, defensive line help, offensive line help. All things that would have been nice to know before I put this mock draft together. But here we are. I'm sticking with Keon Coleman just to support my guy Danny Cannell because Florida State got screwed in the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Rick in the sense of I'm not sure wide receiver is a huge need here. Not that I don't like Keon Coleman, because I really do. But I think if you look at the Eagles in particular, the issue is defense. They need some help there. They've got an aging defensive front. Obviously, their secondary didn't play as well as they would have liked. They were hampered with some injuries, too. So maybe you needed, just for the simple point of some depth. You know, I think if Jared Verse, if we redid this mock, and if he goes to the Vikings here, you still have Quinyon Mitchell, who was on the board. That would be an ideal spot to take a cornerback here, help out that secondary that really struggled this past year for the Eagles.
Ryan, did you put this draft together before or after the Vegas flu hit you?
I did it. After. Thank you, Amanda. Now that I think about it, yes.
See,
there we go.
You're
Perfect.
trying to build in excuses for Ryan. Is that what you're saying?
No, I love every single mock draft that Ryan puts together, but I did have somebody here, because my voice is still a little scratchy, say I know everybody who went to Vegas, because all of you still sound terrible.
You know what the problem is? We haven't talked about one Oklahoma player, and you're a big Boomer Sooner, yet you haven't said anything to Ryan about that so far.
Wait, that's okay, because I hung out with Baker. You saw that. We're fine there. Let's go to the Cowboys here. And Rick, I'm going to toss this to you, because you said you would have liked to see the Eagles take Cooper DeJean. This is where we see him go to the Cowboys. So if it's not the Eagles, would you like him for the Cowboys?
Yeah, and I'm the fixer of these mock drafts. That's what my role is on this show, so that's what I come in and do. He does the mocks, and then I try to fix them, just like I did when I was at GM. So nothing's changed. Yeah, no, I could see them potentially taking a corner here, but you still have Gilmore, who's older but playing well. Bland played very well. Diggs is coming off an injury. So I went offensive line here. You got Tyrone Smith, who's coming up, older left tackle that's coming out of contract. I would move on from him. Take Taylor Smith, who is the left guard, move him out at his natural position to left tackle, and I would take Troy Fautanu here, the left tackle from Washington, who's going to be a better inside player at guard. Therefore, the Dallas Cowboys have always been good up front. This solves their offensive line issues. They still have enough depth in the secondary at corner, so I think this was a no-brainer to go here with Troy Fautanu from Washington.
I'm laughing, Brady, because this is the young man who wears shorts, and Rick hates offensive linemen who wear shorts during the game, but he's going to take him in the first round. Rick, I'll let you explain. I know we're on a delay here, but explain why you're okay with a young man wearing shorts. You take him as a first-round pick.
I just don't understand that the college, and Brady, this starts with you. How can you let college guys just wear thigh pads and then that's it? And then their whole thighs and their knees are exposed, especially an offensive lineman. Aren't you supposed to have your knee pads hanging over your kneecaps, breathing snot and trying to knock people off the ball? This is the only thing that really bugs. He's a very good football player, but I can't stand players playing in shorts, and I blame Brady Quinn for that.
I will say this much, okay? I did point that out as immediately when I started watching the film was, oh, that's a pretty boy offensive lineman. He's looking with some nice steez out there with the way he's got his uniform on, showing off those kneecaps. Like, I played an era where they made sure you had those big knee pads in there. You couldn't really have that type of style where you could, like, roll up the jersey and show off the abs or show off the tailplate. All that was done. We had to wear a proper uniforms moving forward. Eddie George, anyone who watched them,
I'm just wondering what offensive lineman is showing off their abs.
Socks.
What offensive lineman has
linemen,
abs?
Players, though. But anyway, I'll put it this way. Not many offensive linemen are showing off their knees and their knees. I
just want you to know, our producer Jack is in my ear saying Brady would wear a crop top.
Well, I would have. They would have allowed me back in the day, but that wasn't allowed back then. I'll say this much, though. Love the player. I like the style, too, for a lineman, although he will probably get ripped in the O-line room for that once he gets into the NFL. But probably O-line makes a little more sense here, too, as far as the need for the Dallas Cowboys. They need to beef up that group. They need to make sure they can give Dak Prescott every opportunity, to be able to continue to have a little bit of balance run the football, but protection as well. So I do like the pick of the O-lineman here, as opposed to looking at what the defensive side of the ball.
Brian, feel better. I thought it was a fabulous mock draft. And you mentioned Oklahoma, how Ryan wasn't talking about the local players. Tyler Guyton going to the Super Bowl champs, the Kansas City Chiefs at 32. Love that pick out of Oklahoma. Ryan Wilson, thank you so much. Ryan, the host of With the First Pick podcast, along with our general manager, Rick Spielman. Latest episode, started listening to it this morning. They're doing a draft back and forth. Only got like a third of the way through, so you listen, I'll listen, and everything will be good.